Honorable Pernell Helona, how do you vote?
Votes red.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes red, and Honorable Pernell Helona votes green. Excuse me.
Votes red.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green, and Honorable Pernell Helona votes red. Honorable Jamie Henio, how do you vote?
Votes red.
Honorable Jamie Henio votes red. Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Rick Nez, how do you vote?
Delegate Rick Nez votes red.
Honorable Rick Nez votes red. Honorable Carl Slater, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Carl Slater votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr., how do you vote?
Red.
Honorable Wilson C. Stewart Jr. votes red. Honorable Charlene Stowe, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene Stowe votes green. Honorable Daniel Stowe, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel Stowe votes green. Honorable Eugene Stowe, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene Stowe. Honorable Eugene Stowe did not vote. Honorable Otto Stowe, how do you vote?
Vote green.
Honorable Otto Stowe votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr., how do you vote?
I vote green.
Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. votes green. Honorable Edison Monica, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Edison Monica votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable Edmund Yazzie votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I vote red.
Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes red. Going back up once more. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton, how do you vote? Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton did not vote. Honorable Eugene Stowe, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene Stowe votes green. With that, Speaker Damon, you have 14 delegates that have voted green, 8 that have opposed, and 2 delegates, including yourself, who have not voted.
Thank you very much, colleagues. With that,
Speaker?
on legislation 017, yes.
Speaker?
Yes.
Speaker, I'm sorry. This is Delegate Charles Newton. I was on mute. Are we voting on the tobacco legislation for it to move forward? Is that correct?
Yes. We're voting on the main motion.
Okay. I am voting against I'm voting green for the tobacco to be banned at the casino.
This is on the main motion, not the amendment. The main motion on legislation 0174-21. Madam Chair Charles Newton, which way do you vote?
I vote green, Speaker. Speaker, did you get that? I vote green.
Changes the vote from 14 to 15 in favor, 8 opposed, Chair not voting. That, colleagues, that legislation 0174-21 moves forward to the Navajo Nation Council.
Just listening to this is just incredible. I mean, my goodness, it just brings back so much emotion. Do you remember where you were when that NABIC meeting took place for this legislation?
Yeah, I remember I was sitting with a couple of my coworkers and also my family, and I was just listening in, and I was like, how historic is this? This is very, really something that we've worked for many years, and it was just an awesome time of just listening in, the work that we've done in our office, the work we've done with the coalitions, the work we've done with the people, with the Navajo Nation, and just to see it here, listening in is just very, very historic and very appreciative of our leadership.
Yeah. What about you as a Navajo young adult? What did this mean for you, especially just listening to this for the first time as our elected leaders made this historic decision?
Yeah, that was awesome. I remember back in my undergraduate program at Northern Arizona University. Wow, it was incredible just hearing about it.
So the NABI meeting just kind of, the results from the NABI meeting just set the precedence for what would happen weeks later at the Navajo Nation's winter session, or fall session, at the Navajo Nation's fall session. And it's just incredible just to listen back to this video and to hear the voices and to hear the support from our leaders. It's just, every time I listen to it, it gives me goosebumps to know just what has happened over the last probably 15, 16 years of education about commercial tobacco products to our Navajo people. And that night, our leaders literally understood the meaning of what we've been trying to do.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for listening in to this very special KTNN radio forum. This Saturday, February 5th, the Heirs Life Act goes into full effect throughout the Navajo Nation. And tonight, we'll speak with the Heirs Life Health Coalition regarding best practices for policy success and some things that ordinary people can do to help ensure that this policy is being implemented as successful as possible. But first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the host for tonight. My name is Clinton Isham. I'm from the Lac du Flambeau Ojibwe community, which is in northern Wisconsin. I'm the tribal relations consultant with the Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights Foundation, which is located in Berkeley. I currently live in Chicago, Illinois. My job is to basically do what I'm here doing tonight, to provide assistance and help with tribes that are doing tobacco prevention work or commercial tobacco policy work, however we want to look at it. I work with different tribal casinos and health coalitions, and I help provide resources and develop talking points or help specifically with policy. If there's anything that needs to be done to ensure that our tribal communities remain smoke-free and that our kids are protected and that our casino workers are protected from secondhand smoke, that's my job. And I'm glad to be here tonight with the Navajo Nation and with the Heirs Life Health Coalition. Before I worked with the Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights Foundation, I worked with the Great Lakes Intertribal Council as the Wisconsin Native American Tobacco Network Director. My job there was to work with the 11 tribes in Wisconsin and to ensure that funds from the state of Wisconsin were getting to the different tribes and that the tribes were getting the appropriate resources and tobacco policy work was being done in these communities as culturally respectful and responsive as possible. So I love this line of work. I've been in this line of work for several years, working with a lot of different tribal communities. Something that I've learned throughout my travels in different parts of Indian country, working with different tribes, and really just learning from different people in this line of work and learning from the mentors that I've had in this line of work is how symbolic and just really impactful tobacco policy work, commercial tobacco policy work is in Indigenous communities. And something that I always think about is that, we as Indigenous people, we're known for being community-centric. We take action, or when we do something, when we take action for something, we do it to benefit our communities. And we do this to benefit the resources in our communities. So, our lakes, the forests, the soil, everything that we do these things for our communities rather than for ourselves. And that's just in our DNA. And we as Indigenous people, we've always had that in us. And we've always used policy to effectively and efficiently improve the livelihood of our respective nations. And, we do this for our people. So, for example, the birth of modern democracy was molded after pre-colonial Haudenosaunee political systems. When colonizers first arrived in the eastern seaboard, they saw the systems in place that the Iroquois people had. And, over the years, they've learned from the Iroquois people, and they used what they had in place to then write the United States Constitution. And of course, some of the first examples of smoke-free policies that were passed in the United States was actually passed by an Indian Health Service clinic on the Hopi Nation in the 1970s. So we've always excelled in this type of policy work and, set the example for the rest of the United States and other communities that are looking in. The Heirs Life Act is truly an exceptional policy, and it's already had a profound short-term impact on both the gaming industry and in Indian country. I remember when the Heirs Life Act was actually passed a couple of months ago, every single gaming industry website and newspaper were talking about the Navajo Nation and the importance of the Heirs Life Act and, kind of what this meant for the gaming industry, both tribal and commercial. We're already seeing ripples that took place almost immediately. And this also took place in a lot of different tribal communities within, tribal councils. And, different tribal leaders started to have conversations and took steps, the appropriate steps, to kind of ensure that their casinos remain smoke-free and that their communities remain smoke-free. So it's very impactful almost immediately. Like any policy, the intended results, the change that we wish to make, takes place during long-term implementation. For example, when the developers of the Heirs Life Act gathered over 13 years ago, they asked themselves, how will this policy impact the Navajo Nation in 7 generations? What will tobacco use look like in 7 generations? Not only in the Navajo Nation, but on other tribes and in the rest of the United States. And on this webinar, we're really going to get into the impact of the Heirs Life Act and why it's so important. And of course, we're going to talk about implementation and the date that it goes into effect, which is, again, this Saturday, February 5th. And to help us get started, I'm going to ask Hershel Clark to first kind of do a welcoming for us, and then I'll go in to introduce the rest of the panelists on tonight's radio forum. So take it from here, Hershel.
Yes, thank you, Clinton. We have some great guests this evening who will be sharing information on the historic passing of the Navajo Nation Ibina Heirs Life Act of 2021. We know the passing of this health policy will not only protect the health of the well-being of our people, but will most importantly save lives as we move forward with this policy. Before I start off, I'd like to just go ahead and introduce myself. The Good evening, everybody. My name is Hershel Walker Clark. I am calling out of Winslow, Arizona. My family resides in Tisto, Tisnanyele. That's where my family resides in, but I'm originally from Chinle. So, my relatives and my friends who are listening in this evening. As you mentioned, Clinton, this act will have a positive impact not only for our Navajo people, but for Indian country as well. We hope tribes will adopt similar health policies for their people, especially as we move forward from COVID-19. For tonight's discussion, we plan to share important information related to the implementation of the Heirs Life Act. This act was passed by the 24th Navajo Nation Council back in October of 2021 and later signed into law on November 6, 2021 by President Jonathan Nez. The implementation of this act has 90 days until the Navajo Nation fully implements the act. So what we plan to share this evening is information on the act and what should we know as we move forward with this policy. Questions such as, what will be different now that this act has been passed? And what are we expected to do in order to follow this act? We'll also be sharing information on commercial tobacco-free signs and where a person can receive a sign if requested. And also understanding where commercial tobacco is restricted within the Navajo Nation, such as how many feet away does a person have to be when smoking commercial tobacco products. So basically, we'll be sharing information on the implementation of the Heirs Life Act and how the people can learn more about the act and what it really means. The main goal of tonight's discussion is to share information on the act and to make sure the act is successfully implemented for the Navajo Nation. With that said, I would like to welcome everyone tonight to this evening's special KTN Radio Forum, the implementation of the Navajo Nation Ibina Heirs Life Act of 2021. Let's go ahead and dive into the discussion so we could share more on what the Heirs Life Act means for the Navajo people. Thank you, Clinton.
Thank you, Hershel, for that great welcoming. Thank you for introducing yourself as a panelist. And now I'd like to ask the other two speakers to introduce themselves. And first, I'd like to ask Sierra Wilcox, and then we'll move on to Dr. Henderson.
Yat esh e Sierra Wilcox Yinishe, the Bethlehem Nishle, okay winge bashishchin, Belagana dashishche, Toflana dine dashanale, Beshanal date nasha. Hello everyone, my name is Sierra Wilcox. I was born and raised in Winslow, Arizona. I am Black Sheep, born for the San Juan Pueblo tribe. My maternal grandfather is white and my paternal grandfather is Gilaguna. I received my bachelor's degree in public health from Northern Arizona University in 2020. Today I work for the Southwest Navajo Tobacco Education Prevention Project as a research assistant. Thank you, Clinton and colleagues, for having me on today. Welcome, viewers. I hope you enjoy our radio forum.
Thank you, Sierra. Dr. Henderson, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Clinton. Yat e shik edo shidene sheya Patricia Nez Henderson. Dashijane atin shlon totsoni bashichin changekin dashanale ashte dashiche kut I sando mado zeil inenshla ado chajin khatoy agis nasha adashia ho akoshik ado daisin spanki o yat ein kidishnil to Dichashane, Jino, Chayata deal Katit, as a Yego Ben Dashil Nisha, the queer she is lean coho, yat a keha.
Thank you to the guest speakers for introducing yourselves. And now I'd just like to get into the first question. You know, as we all know, this Saturday, February 5th, the Heirs Life Act goes into effect. And my first question for the panelists and for the different speakers is, why is this policy so important to the Navajo tribe and to Dene people?
Clinton, that is a really, really great question. I think for me as a physician, as a scientist, public health scientist, the Heirs Life Act is one of the most powerful health policies that have been passed by any Indian country or any Indian tribes in the U.S. It is based on our fundamental laws, and it really is targeting the tobacco industry for the acts that they have done to put these products that are very deadly in the hands of our people. So we have taken that power back, and also are saving the lives of our children and the children that are going to be born tomorrow. And more importantly, or as importantly, it's also protecting our casino workers. I think we've been at this for such a long time, for 13 years of hard work, and I'm just really, really excited. This has been, it has been in the making for such a long time, and I could go on forever about this, but I'm going to let Hershel and Sierra give their viewpoints as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Henderson. And yeah, that's a good question, Clinton. I think Dr. Henderson covered a lot of areas that I was going to kind of say, but I just kind of thinking about my personal interest in public health, how I got involved with public health, it's really just looking at how we use commercial tobacco just in our culture, our ways of life, and especially with our ceremony, especially with our culture. There's been a misconception of how we understand tobacco within our own tribal communities, and specifically Navajo Nation. I think the use of this noto, or ceremonial tobacco, I've noticed throughout the time as being a researcher and as being part of this program in this long-term 13 years of advocacy work and looking at the communities, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done in the communities. So I think my interest is really just continuing to work with our traditional healers, our organizations, to really understand the difference between commercial tobacco versus our own ceremonial tobacco, and really correcting the history that has been done. Like Dr. Henderson mentioned, that the history is really important to understand why we're doing this work and why we may have like some of the highest prevalences in the use of commercial tobacco and how that impacts our health overall. I mean, I could go into statistics and all that, but I think some of us are familiar with that. But I think my interest is just really just highlighting these populations, such as our healers and ceremonial settings, that we really need to kind of bring a little more attention to that, how our culture has been misconcepted in a sense. So yeah, I think I'll just keep it simple too as well. Thank you.
Good question, Clinton. I think for me as a new graduate and a young adult, just like doing research on the impacts of e-cigarette use with our youth is tremendous.
Can I jump in? I think one of the
Yeah.
things also that I'd like to add to it is that it was so exciting. I mean, leading up to the committee meetings, during the committee meetings with the Navajo Nation Council, there was just a lot of enthusiasm, not just within Navajo Nation, but outside of Navajo Nation. There were so many Native people, public health professionals that were listening in on what would happen because this was so historic. But I just remember during that time, that meeting in October, and when our legislators, our council delegates voted in favor to move this to fall session, I just had this, like, I was just ready to go dancing. I mean, it was so exciting. I mean, it just unbelievable excitement for something that we have worked so hard for.
So my next question is for Hershel. What's the most important part of successfully implementing the Heirs Life Act? I'm sure implementation of this act will be a major, major task. What are some of the things that you and your team are prepared for? And what are some of the most important things that need to happen to make sure that this policy is successful?
All right, thank you, Clinton. I think that's a really good question. And I believe education. I think education is the most important part of the implementation of this act. This includes educating the communities, the visitors, leadership, tribal government from chapter house level to tribal programs, enterprises, and Navajo businesses that are within the boundaries of the Navajo Nation. And to achieve this, I really strongly believe that we need to continue to just educate the communities, educate the tribal leaders on what we're doing with the implementation activities. This will help ensure that we are all doing our part in making sure that this implementation is successful. Reaching all the way down to the Hogan level is something I've always said, doing research on the Navajo Nation is just making sure it gets down to the Hogan level. I think that's really important. And a good example is us being on this KTNN radio forum. I think just sharing us the information that we're sharing tonight is really going to make a tremendous impact on how the people understand this policy and the implementation that are moving forward. And there's also other ways to inform and educate the people, such as creating educational flyers related to the implementation, newspaper ads, radio ads, whether that be from Navajo Times, Gallup Independence, or Hopi and Navajo Observers. These are just a few newspapers that a lot of our people do read and get information, for whatever topic we're talking about in this implementation. We have provided some newspaper ads in regards to this act as well. In addition, one thing that we're able to do with our program is developing an Heirs Life website. For some of you guys have not visited yet, I really encourage you guys to go and check out our website. It's at NavajoHeirSLife.com. There's some really good information in regards to what we're doing here, and some really nice resources as well in regards to the Heirs Life Act. Another thing I believe is very important is posting of commercial tobacco smoke-free signs within the designated areas in the Navajo Nation. The signs are a really important part of the implementation process. So making sure that we educate the people on the smoke-free signs as we continue to implement this policy. And one of the things that we've done is we developed Navajo language smoke-free signs, and also the English version as well. So I think just having both the cultural language and also the English language is going to be very successful in how we relate the information to the people. There are also some creative ways that we could do in sharing information, and some of the listeners may know about broadcasting. I know this is something new within tribal communities, especially with Navajo Nation, but broadcasting has been a really good form of how people relate information. It's become very popular in some areas as well, especially during COVID-19. And we do have an actual local native broadcasters out there. Some of you guys may be familiar with different types, but the one I'm associated with is Your Auntie's Favorite Podcast. I'm actually a co-host on there, so we do talk about various topics pertaining to native issues, Navajo specific a lot of times. So we did do an Heirs Life recording on that. So, so podcasts is something that's really interesting to really relate to information to the people. I think a lot of people are going that, especially the younger generation. So that's a good way too, as well as we move forward in implementation of this policy. And I think from our experience through COVID-19, social media. Social media has played a most influential way to how people share information, how we get information, and we do have our Era's Life social media pages up, where you could find more information and resources and what we do within our program and what the Era's Life Act is all about. So I would encourage people to just check out our Era's Life website. I think we have the Facebook, we have Instagram, and I believe we have the Twitter up too as well. So those are some of the social media platforms that we have information in regards to what we've been doing with the Era's Life, and a lot of good videos too as well, educational videos that we post within the website and within the social media platforms as well. So I would encourage people to, if they want to know more, to visit these websites as well. And just to end it, I think education. Education is the most effective way in making sure the implementation of this Era's Life Act is successful for the Navajo Nation. So thank you, Clinton, for that question.
Thank you. So with the prevalence of e-cigarettes and the legalization of marijuana throughout the United States, I'm wondering what is included as commercial tobacco products in the Era's Life Act? Many different governments or communities, when they pass these types of policies, they have different definitions for what is commercial tobacco. And I know us as Indigenous people, some of us have views on ceremonial tobacco, and we use ceremonial tobacco. So I just wanted to ask the question, what is commercial tobacco according to the Era's Life Act? Dr. Henderson.
Linda, that is a really great question. As we all know, the tobacco industry has modified a plant that was sacred to many, many tribes. As an example, we have nicotina plants that grow indigenously there on Navajo Nation that is used for ceremonial purposes. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about those products that the industry have developed and continue to put in the hands of our children. As I said earlier, these include cigarettes, pipes, cigars, e-cigarettes, smokeless tobacco products, hookahs, all these products that have been out there for a long time now. And unfortunately, it's really been utilized by our Navajo children. The data shows that, as well as our young adults there on Navajo Nation. There's a high prevalence of cigarette use among our young adults. So these are the products that we're talking about as we're talking about the prohibition of commercial tobacco products in public places and workplaces. The coalition considered putting language in there about marijuana smoke or cannabis smoke, and after consultation with a couple of our council delegates, that language was struck out. Currently, the Navajo Nation has a law that prohibits the use of cannabis products right now, and I'm sure there's a lot of conversation going on with council delegates as well as others about this, and it's certainly a public health issue that needs to be addressed once the Navajo Nation should decide to legalize it. But this act does, Era's Life Act does not cover those products.
Thank you. Hershel, can you explain to me what places on the Navajo Nation are included in this law that goes into effect this Saturday? In the Era's Life Act, do you guys define what workplaces mean and what public places mean?
Yes, thank you, Clinton. So when you read the actual Era's Life Act, it really is simple. It really states that the use of all commercial tobacco products is prohibited or restricted within public places and workplaces in the Navajo Nation. So what does public places mean? According to the Act, it means that any enclosed area to which the public is invited or which the general public is permitted, including but not limited to all Navajo tribal buildings, Navajo enterprises, including the casinos, which are the Twin Arrows, Fire Rock, Northern Edge, and water flowing casinos, and also hotels, laundromats, restaurants, retail stores, sports facilities, just to name a few. And it also includes outdoor areas such as cultural public places or events such as powwows or song and dance within the Navajo Nation. And usually you'll see that at the fairgrounds, so it does include fairgrounds as well. And as for workplaces, this means enclosed areas and it's entirely under the control of a public or private employer where workers, regardless of whether they are employees, contractors, or volunteers, who perform work that includes all Navajo office buildings and work areas in the Navajo Nation, such as construction sites or just in general. I think people understand where workplaces are. So I think when it comes to public places and workplaces in the Navajo Nation, it's very similar to how we behave off the Navajo Nation. Let's say we go to, Winslow or Albuquerque or Gallup or Farmington, Flagstaff, these border towns, we do have policies that we obey by in regards to commercial tobacco. We know we're not allowed to smoke in restaurants or, parks and recreations. So there's these signs up that, our behavior is really reflective off the Navajo Nation. So this policy really just is really similar to our behaviors. So I believe that when we continue to implement this policy and just through education, especially these signs, that people will understand, where they're designated to smoke in non-smoking areas, especially within workplaces and public places. So I think as we continue to move forward in the implementation of this smoke-free policy, that people will understand where public places are and then where workplaces are in regards to this policy. But I think making sure that we post signs is very important, and businesses who are moving forward to understand that you're able to, posting those signs is very important, and I think that's one of the main things when it comes to public places and workplaces, just understanding and being respectful of those signs that are up and understanding where the designated areas are where it's restricted for non-use of commercial tobacco. And also, as you mentioned, Clinton, this act does not include tobacco from being used or prohibited within two main areas. One is private residence, unless used for commercial uses such as childcare or healthcare facilities. And the second is the ceremonial use or commercial tobacco use within Navajo ceremonial settings or cultural purposes in the Navajo Nation. This means when tobacco is used in a bona fide traditional ceremonial purposes for ceremonial or cultural settings and purposes in the Navajo Nation, it's not prohibited or restricted. The Navajo Nation recognizes the fundamental use of this noto, natural mountain smoke, as an integral part of the nation. So I think it's really important that we respect the cultural aspects of how we use tobacco, whether that be in a ceremonial setting, or whether that be in a public place or So I think it's really important that we respect the use of ceremonial tobacco. Within this policy, we are not prohibiting the use of tobacco to be used for cultural purposes or within ceremonial settings. And we look at our traditional healers and our traditional organizations to really take the lead in how they could, implement, policies, or if there are ever going to be policies to look at that area, that population, and how commercial tobacco is being used in those ceremonies. But for this policy, it's not prohibited or restricted. So thank you, Clinton. Appreciate that question.
So my next question is for Sierra Wilcox. The Heirs Life Act goes into effect this Saturday, February 5th. How does an employer on the Navajo Nation comply with the Heirs Life Act?
That's a great question, Clinton. As an employer, you can do your part in complying with the Heirs Life Act by adopting, implementing, and by maintaining a written commercial tobacco-free policy in accordance with the Act. Communication is also important, so let all your employees know ahead of time about the policy. I also think the most important part of the process is the posting of no commercial tobacco signs and making sure they are posted in plain view within major entrances and the entrances of public bathrooms. In addition, what Navajo businesses can do is remove any ashtrays or containers used for disposal of commercial tobacco. Also, ask individuals using commercial tobacco on the premises or property to stop and step outside. Keep in mind that commercial tobacco use outside any establishment is not allowed within 25 feet of any entrance, exit, windows, or any air intake systems. I think most of our people are aware and behave in a respectful manner. So posting smoke-free signs and being consistent and informing people is a good to help Navajo businesses comply with the act. For more information too, and understanding of this policy, you can always visit our website at www.navajoairslife.com. Thank you, Clinton, for asking that question on behalf of the Navajo businesses and the Navajo Nation.
Real quick, Sarah, just another question related to that. How will businesses, or how do businesses get a hold of smoke-free signs? Are those signs available where they could put up in the parking lots or on their buildings? What's that process look like?
Good question, Clinton. Anyone that's wanting signs, they can pick them up here at the SNTEPP office in Winslow. You can also contact us via our website, or you can contact us on our number.
Dr. Henderson, can you discuss the penalties and fines surrounding the Heirs Life Act? Are there penalties? Are there fines for, say, someone that refuses to put out a cigarette indoors in a workplace or in a public place? Also, how will this policy be enforced?
I think when the coalition was drafting the legislation, they really took this section into consideration. You know, in previous smoke-free laws, policies that have been passed by states as well as tribes, there was a lot, like a fine that was put in place, and the Heirs Life Coalition felt like this was not necessary for our people, that we didn't want to penalize individuals for smoking or for using smokeless tobacco products. And so I think what we're doing, and this is part of enforcement, is just really educating the employers on Navajo Nation to do their part, for the grandmas and the grandpas to do their part, because they're the ones that are the enforcers, right? They're the ones that are going to say in the wet those things. And as Sierra said, also putting up signs is very important. This is a policy that is one of the easiest policies to enforce. It's just a lot of education, and the Department of Health as well as the Division of Social Service are going to be involved in making sure that that happens. Oh, in terms of penalties, and in the act it says there'll be citations, but I don't see that happening. You know, it's just a lot of education. We've seen this with states and local municipalities where it was just folks, the regular moms and pops and grandmas and grandpas that will be making sure that this is abided by, that people abide by this new act. And the signs are really cool also. It's in Navajo and in English. So, and we really worked with several of our Navajo leaders in developing these signs. So if you're wanting it in Navajo, stop by the SNTEPP office and get those signs out into your communities.
So, Sierra, do you want to provide us an example of this enforcement that Dr. Henderson was just talking about? Say you were in a tribal casino on the Navajo Nation and someone lit up a cigarette next to you, and what do you say to this person? How would you what would you say about the Heirs Life Act to educate this person next to you to kind of tell them that smoking is prohibited in the casino?
Good question. I think almost all commercial tobacco users want to follow rules and want to know where smoking commercial tobacco is allowed or prohibited. You can communicate the new policy using gentle, positive, and effective, clear messages. I'll go ahead and give an example. Excuse me, I just want to let you know Navajo Nation law no longer allows commercial tobacco use indoors, including this building. I'm sorry, but you'll have to step outside and use commercial tobacco. Or you can do something like this. The new commercial tobacco-free policy prohibits smoking commercial cigarettes here. Thank you for your cooperation. And just be mindful to always be respectful and clear and direct to the individual. And then just direct the individual to the nearest place that he or she can smoke. And if the person refuses to comply, let the manager on duty or the security personnel handle the situation. If it is necessary, use a normal protocol for removing a disruptive customer for the misuse of commercial tobacco. There are many other ways to ask a person, but I think the most important thing to remember is to be polite, respectful, and direct. I think most people will comply with this rule, especially if we use kinship or Navajo kinship and how we relay our message.
Sierra, the policy goes into effect this Saturday, February 5th. Where do I go to look for talking points or to prepare myself with language on how to be, as respectful as possible when asking someone to stop smoking indoors at a public place or in a workplace? Are there any resources available from the Heirs Life Health Coalition?
For more information, you can always look at our website at www.navajoheirslife.com. We have tons of pictures on there, tons of information about our Heirs Life Act.
So my next question is open to any of the speakers on the radio forum tonight. And what I'm wondering is, what does the long-term vision look like now that the Heirs Life Act has passed? And to reiterate what I was talking about earlier, when you gathered at the drawing table, over 13 years ago, what were some of the long-term goals that were discussed, and, what did you guys want to happen?
Clinton, I think that's a great question. The act certainly is intended for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren. So we're really thinking into the future as this act was being developed. I think one of the most important things for us is to make that differences between ceremonial versus commercial tobacco. This is something that we're educating not only our Navajo people about, but as well as other indigenous tribes and non-indigenous peoples, that they understand that difference. What has happened over the years is because of federal policies, as well as what the role of the tobacco industry has done, is we've normalized the use of commercial tobacco products. So today, our Navajo youth have one of the highest rates, as Sierra mentioned, one of the highest rates in the country. And we're hoping that by this act, that those rates begin to go down and hopefully eliminate it completely. And we have high rates of smokeless tobacco products also among our youth and our adults. Smoking is increasing among our Navajo women. And this is anecdotal data that's coming from the Indian Health Service in 638. They're noticing a lot more Navajo women are smoking. So this act will help those individuals that are smokers, that are commercial tobacco users, to think about quitting. And I just want to make sure that we really talk about quitting, and that there's a lot of services available for our Navajo listeners or that are listening today. There's the state quit lines that are available, as well as just talking to your physician or your nurse practitioner about quitting. There's a lot of resources available for that. But I see, I guess, for me as a physician and a scientist, a public health scientist, I envision that my great-grandchildren will never have access to commercial tobacco products on Navajo Nation. These are products that don't belong on Navajo Nation, but at the same time, they will be respecting ceremonial tobacco. That's what I envision.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. And for the listeners at home, we're discussing the Heirs Life Act, which goes into effect this Saturday, February 5th. Hershel, would you like to add anything on to what Dr. Henderson had just said?
Just to piggyback off what Dr. Henderson mentioned is long-term impacts would be, for me, just tribes, other tribes picking this up, very similar to, the smoke-free policy that we passed here on the Navajo Nation, just, making sure that it goes permanent. Right now, I think there's a lot of tribes out there that are currently, smoke free, but it's not permanent. And I think the key is just making it permanent and making sure that we protect our, our people and our workers within the tribal casinos. I think that's really important moving forward. And also just understanding the use of commercial tobacco within ceremonial settings. I think Indian country really needs to reclaim our tobacco in regards to how we use it from a cultural point of view. And what I mean by that is just really understanding the language behind it, the stories, the songs, the prayers that are really associated to our desnoto, or the use of our ceremonial tobacco, and how powerful that is. And then just in the works that we do in public health, healing, ceremonial tobacco is very, very important to the healing process for our people. So I believe it's really important that we reclaim our tobacco and reinforce the teachings behind those as well to continue that for our people. So the long-term vision for me is really reclaiming our tobacco through public health policies such as prohibiting commercial tobacco from ceremonial settings. So for me, it's really just reclaiming our ceremonial tobacco, whether that be from policy development, health policies, really restricting us to get away from commercial tobacco use for our tribal communities. So that's the long-term impacts, that I see with this Heirs Life Act. So thank you for that question.
Again, this question is open to all the guests on the radio forum tonight. What are the next steps for the Heirs Life Health Coalition? Are you planning on working with other tribes? And if so, how do you see that working out?
I think for the Heirs Life Act has already had an impact in Indian country, as you said, Clinton, at the beginning. As an example, the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation passed a policy within, I want to say weeks, right, Clinton? Was it within weeks of the Heirs Life being passed? And
Within days.
Within days. So yeah, so so that's really exciting that other tribes are really considering this. And I think a lot of tribes were waiting for Navajo Nation to make this move. And we've heard this over the years that they were waiting for this to happen. And we plan to, I guess, on our end, we plan to work with other tribes in the area. If you're listening and you're from a different nation, contact us. We would love to help you out at any level, whether it's sharing information about our website or strategies that the coalition used. Anything is available. But we're just really excited that this policy is going to be effective. Again, it's going into enactment February 5th. So it's just a couple of days away. So we're just really excited.
My last question is, what would you like to share or leave with the listeners regarding the conversation that we had today, regarding the Heirs Life Act implementation? Anybody could start.
Okay, I'll start. As a public health professional, I observed the tremendous increase of e-cigarette use with our people, specifically among our youth and young adult population. So I think it's important to get this message out to our people and communities, that there are many resources to help you. If you or someone you know is looking to quit, you can call the Arizona Smokers Helpline at 1-800-5566-222. If you live in the Utah or New Mexico area, you can always call their quit line at 1-800-784-8669. However, we know quitting is not always easy, so it's okay if you aren't ready now, but you may want to quit at some point. So keep learning and preparing yourself. I know many smokers do quit. I just want to encourage you and say you can too. It's never too late to quit. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. Is there anything else that the panelists would like to share?
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share the importance of Heirs Life Act. Just the act, the name of this act is so important. It is because of air that we live, and we've been saying all along that every breath is sacred. And in the midst of everything that we've gone through with the pandemic, we now really appreciate just the air and the purity of the air, and why it's important to create environments that create a sacred space that is not filled with smoke, as an example. So we're just really excited. I'm really excited to see this new law go into effect on February 5th. And we've been doing this for such a long time that I actually told my team members, like, after this happens, I'm retiring. And maybe not, but we just put so much time and effort into this. And I want to give a special thank you to my family, my late father, my grandfather, Joe Yazzie, my mom, Janet, and my brother, Pete, and my siblings. They were there supporting me from the very, very beginning when we started this. And I just want to say special thank you to them, because, through their prayers and support, they really backed me up to do the work. And finally, to my husband and my two children, I'm married to a Lakota man. That's why I'm here in South Dakota, Dr. Jeff Henderson. Without his support, this would not have happened. He's a physician as well, and really understand the importance of such policies. And just so thank you, honey, for your support. And finally, to my two children, thank you so much for just standing by me. And it's been a tough journey to get to this point, but I did envision this would happen, and it did. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of tears, a lot of lost hours of sleep, but we did it. And I know that Hershel's going to give a big shout out to other folks too. So Hershel, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Henderson. And just to kind of piggyback that last words, and I think it's only proper that we actually recognize quite a few people who've been on this journey for the last 13 years. And I think for my last closing remarks, I just would like to just thank the Navajo people for their continuous support. We know there was a lot of people who supported this Heirs Life Act. And also would like to thank our grassroots partners, SNTEPP of the Navajo Nation, the Navajo Association, Teen Navajo Health Coalition, Heirs Life Health Coalition. You guys have been a tremendous support in regards to this successful policy that has been passed. And also our other partners, such as American Non-Smokers' Rights, Shar, Bronson, and Cynthia, and also you, Clinton, in regards to just the continued support from you guys. You guys have been very, very much involved in the work that we've been doing here on the Navajo Nation and throughout Indian country. So appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. And also American Cancer Society, thank you. And also the team there at Arizona Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control, thank you for your continuous support as well throughout the years. And we'd like to give a special thanks to the Honorable Peter McDonald and Wanda McDonald for your continuous support, Honorable Ben Shelley, Honorable former Vice President Rex Lee Jim, and also our spiritual leaders, Honorable Anthony Lee from the Navajo Association, Automai Shiche, Autoshimasana, David and Geraldine Clark from the Tisto community. We appreciate it. And also my mom, my Shimasana, I really appreciate, the continuous support and the spiritual guidances that you guys have given me throughout the years. So I really would appreciate and just want to recognize you guys tonight as well. And also Shiche, Mr. Stephen Benali and Mr. Willie Tracy of the Ezebanaga of the Navajo Nation for your continuous leadership. And a special thank you to our SNTEPP office. We have tremendous people who worked in our office over the years. Just to name a few: Robert Carr, Jackie Nahi, Dana Wilcox, Peter Nez Jr., and Mr. Al Yazzie. So appreciate you guys' contribution to the SNTEPP office and your continued efforts. And also I would like to recognize a few important people who have lost throughout the journey, but continue to carry on their knowledge as they contributed in the passing of the Navajo Nation, the Heirs Life Act. We also would like to give a special thank you to the 24th Navajo Nation Council and the President of the Navajo Nation, Jonathan Nez, and the Vice President, Myron Leiser, for your leadership in signing this policy into act and protecting the health and the well-being of our Navajo people. So thank you. Yeah. We would also like to give a special thanks to Mr. Thomas Walker Jr., who has been a champion of our efforts for the last 13 years. So we appreciate you, Mr. Walker, for all the work that you've done, to your family and to your community there, for your continued support in regards to this Era's Life Act. So, and also we would like to thank the Navajo Nation Department of Health for your continuous support in protecting our people during COVID-19. So, thank you. And I know this is a lot of thank yous, but I think, this effort has been historic. The last 13 years is a lot of people who contributed to this policy. And there's probably people I've missed out, so I apologize if I missed out, but we really just appreciate everybody and just really understanding the work that has been done here and how historic this is for the Navajo Nation. And I'm just really appreciative to be part of this as well. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all of the speakers tonight. Thank you for your time, your dedication, and for your involvement in everything that you did to help get the Era's Life Act passed. And for the speakers listening at home tonight, again, this Saturday, February 5th, the Era's Life Act goes into full effect throughout the Navajo Nation, which means that commercial tobacco use is no longer allowed indoors at public places or within workplaces. So some of the major points that I heard from our different speakers tonight was that, one, this has been an incredibly long journey and a long time coming on the Navajo Nation. Two, a lot of people helped make this happen, and a lot of people wanted this to happen. A lot of different, communities, not only on the Navajo Nation, but different tribal communities and, communities that are surrounding the Navajo Nation wanted this to happen. There was a lot of support for the Era's Life Act. Another important thing that I think I really heard from the different speakers is the importance of education and implementation. So, we all need to do our part educating people about the Era's Life Act and sharing with people that on Saturday, February 5th, the Era's Life Act went into full effect, what that means, and helping people with some language and how they can talk to people respectfully, and, putting up signs and sharing the Era's Life website. And, all of this is education work. And, if we all do our part and help educate people about the Era's Life Act, this policy will be successful. And the creators of this policy, worked on this for so long, they will truly get to see the success of this policy unfold, and, their long-term goals and visions, regarding this policy, really manifest within the Navajo Nation and throughout different tribal communities. And that's what this work is about. So thank you, everybody, and I'd now like to pass it on to Dr. Henderson to do our closing remarks. Thank you for having me.
As we close tonight on this very important discussion about the Era's Life Act of 2021, I just want to encourage everyone tonight to take care of themselves. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, and if you haven't gotten vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you haven't had your booster, get your booster shots, and then of course always wear your mask wherever you go, and just protect your children out there. We're just this act just really reminds us of the importance of life, and our children are going to be the ones that are going to be carrying on our traditions and our culture, our teaching. So just take care of them. And it's just been a wonderful time having this conversation with three people that I love dearly. Clinton, Herschel, and Sierra. And thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for all your hard work. And I just, yeah, it's just been an amazing, amazing journey. And I just want to say a big thank you. Good night, everyone.